to me. It's just quick math. Yeah? That's all science is to me. And the people, it's what I love about doing these events. I see some familiar faces, people have come back, so I know there's people in here that have seen me break down science in a very simplified way. But I'm curious, because I do see some unfamiliar faces. Who's never been to a Hidden Science Academy event before? Show of hands. 14. Wow. Wow. For those people who have never been to a Hidden Science Academy event before, I've got one thing to say to you.
You're gonna learn today. You're gonna learn today.
So what are you gonna learn today?
So I'm gonna make how can I Honda? Science! Science again, science again, Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, science again, science again, Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again. Them is me enemy, and I go like my friend, but telling them the same thing, it can't work again. I tell it to me enemy, I tell it to me friend, how can I Honda? Science again, science again, science again, Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, science again, science again, Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again. All entertainer, watch on yourself. All producer, watch on yourself. All street side seller, watch on yourself. All arcade seller, watch on yourself. Them I like how we are prosper, them prophecy disaster. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again. Them I like how we are prosper, them prophecy disaster. How can I wonder? Science again, come science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, come science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again. Just wet up your stall when them show them hope, yeah. Wet up your gate when them plant them hope, yeah. Spray out your car before you drive it no further. Tell it to me sister, tell it to me brother. This a serious thing, nobody take it for no laughter. Science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again. Them is me enemy, and I go like my friend. But till them the same thing, it can't work again. I tell it to me enemy, I tell it to me friend. How can I wonder? Science again, oh, science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again. Some go a 80, but the goods them go buy. But when they check it out, man, a science them a try. Some go a Clarendon, some go a Westmoreland. Them a travel up and down all over the land. After we are work so hard, we put money in a we hand. Them a try to change up the father plan. So come science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again. Them is me enemy, and I go like my friend. But till them the same thing, it can't work again. I tell it to me enemy, I tell it to me friend. How can I wonder? Science again.
Absolutely fantastic, loved it. I've learned so much. It was humorous as well. So and the way the information was broken down was amazing. And I definitely will be coming back to more of the Hidden Science events because yeah, I learned so much, and I'm just so grateful to be able to be a part of it and experience it.
That's very good, very interesting, really good, very inspiring, and I would recommend it to anyone to come. And we will come back again. Absolutely.
Well, I thought the event was fantastic. I thought the delivery was fantastic. The presentation, the breaking down of complex ideas so that everybody could feel involved and can participate was exceptional. And the interaction with the video material was superb.
I was highly recommended.
Hidden Science, man. Hidden Science.
Science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, science again, science again. Hubakaba, Hubakaba, science again, science again, science again. How can I wonder? Science again.
So, the more we start to study self, study our own history, the more we'll start to realize that gang culture or gang violence is not black culture. It is not black culture. And the more we start to study our own history, the more we'll truly gain knowledge of self. And when we gain knowledge of self, we'll naturally drop anything that doesn't pertain to self. We'll naturally drop anything that doesn't pertain to self. Like we'll be walking around and just drop it. And people will be like, excuse me, you dropped something. What did I drop? I think you dropped your culture. My culture? Yeah. Oh, wait, let me check. Hold on a second. Torture. gang violence, war, rape, pedophilia, cannibalism. Nah, this is your culture, right? I picked it up by mistake. Take it back. Yes, greetings family, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome everyone, welcome to the Hidden Science Academy. Welcome the global family. I see everyone in the chat already. I've got my 2 laptops open, so anyone, if you see me turn to my right, I'm just reading your comments, so big up everyone that's already in the chat. Let me know where you're tuned in from, by the way. I know we got a global audience right now, so just let me know if you're tuned in from London. Let me know where you're tuned in from, wherever you are. I saw someone say that they're tuned in from Trinidad. Big up. So just let me know where you're tuned in from. Hertfordshire, Ipswich, Bristol, Peckham, East London in the house, Milton Keynes, Manchester, Wolverhampton, Barbados. Wow. Oxford, Oxfordshire, Poland, Birmingham, Brooklyn in the building. Big up, Monica. Wow, all over. Thamesmead, I saw Luton, North Wheezy, big up, Jamie. Peckham in the building. So many coming through. All right, big up everyone. North, west, south, and east. Angela said, we'd love to say Thailand, but Sheffield. Hey, Sheffield's good, man. Sheffield's cool with me. Big up everyone that's tuned in right now. Enfield in the building, Kent in the building. Big up everyone that's tuned in wherever you're tuned in. This is going to be a very informative webinar on the hidden science of hay fever, and I cannot wait to get started. So big up everyone in the chat. Someone from Paris, big up Paris in the building as well. All right, I'm so excited for tonight, but let me get started. I'm gonna share my screen and tell you what we've got coming up for you. So let me just quickly share my screen. All right, now, there's gonna be a lot of information shared tonight about hay fever, but I'm curious, before we start, like, I know we obviously have some hay fever sufferers in this webinar right now. Just put some ones in the chat. I'm curious, put some ones in the chat if your symptoms are more to do with your nose, like if you suffer from like runny nose or itchy nose. Put some ones in the chat if you suffer from the itchy nose, the runny nose, the sneezing. Loads of ones for that. All right, put some ones in the chat if your symptoms are like more to do with your ears, like ear irritation. Who has the ear irritation? Put some ones in the chat if you've got ear irritations. Loads of ones. All right, put some ones in the chat if you got eye irritations, if you have to be rubbing your eyes every 2 seconds. Enough ones. My Lord, look at all the ones. All right, listen, put some ones in the chat if it's all the above. Like all of that stuff, all the above. Like this is you right now, this is you.
Ooh, where's the Benadryl? Allegra.
All right, if that's you, don't worry. We've got you tonight. We have got you tonight. Trust me, trust me, trust me. The amount of information, the amount of clear information we're going to give you tonight with regards to hay fever and how to get rid of it for good is going to be invaluable. So stay tuned and make sure you stay right to the end. Yeah? Now, before we get into that, just a quick introduction for the people who don't know who I am. My name's Leah Marshall. I'm a sports science lecturer at London South Bank University. I lecture on the sport and exercise science degree course there. I also work for Imperial College. And my sister Vanika, we run the Hidden Science Academy, which is an education provider. And we put on courses, events, webinars, lectures, all to do with the science itself. All to do with the science itself. You know, the stuff that they're not going to teach us, that they don't teach us in school, college, or university. And we put on these events. Anytime we put on a course or an event, or even a webinar, it gets very well attended, especially our physical events. They are very well attended. Why? Because people want to know the truth. People want to know the truth. So every time we put on our physical events, where we're teaching about the science of self, you know, the stuff that they're not teaching us in school, college, or university, especially stuff like, you know, how your body works from a Black perspective, melanin and that sort of stuff. Our events always get very well attended because people want to know the truth. Yeah. So that's what we do. We put on courses, events, lectures, webinars, and that sort of stuff. And because of this, when I was at university, there was a lot of stuff that didn't make sense to me when they were teaching me science. So because of this, I created, this was like, what, 4 or 5 years ago now, I created the Hidden Science of Black Holistic Health, which at the time was a physical course. And the reason why I created this was because of all the stuff that I felt like they weren't teaching us in school, college, or university. Stuff that just didn't make sense to me. Like, they're, especially in anatomy and physiology, like my specialty is anatomy and physiology. And when they'd be teaching us about anatomy and physiology, they'd show like a picture of the body and all the glands in the body and the brain, and they'd miss out the pineal gland. And I'd always find stuff like that strange, like little things that they'd miss out with regards to science. And it, for whatever reason, there was stuff that was missing. And it wasn't until I got a hold of one of Dr. Leah Africa's books that things started to make sense to me. Now, this is him holding up my Black Holistic Health flyer. I was fortunate enough to meet him in 2018. And when I told him what his book's done for me, he couldn't believe it. It blew him away. I was like, I've read all your books, and because of the information that I got from your books, I've created a course called The Hidden Science of Black Holistic Health. He was absolutely blown away. So and he gave, he actually done a video promoting the course and that sort of stuff. And if you know Dr. Leah Africa, he doesn't do stuff like that. So he's actually blown away by it, yeah? But once I got the information from Dr. Leah Africa, I put together this course. I started running it in 2017. The first one was actually in Croydon, big up my Croydon people, at CSCP, which is a supplementary school that Robin Walker actually does his Black History courses at. So Robin Walker actually ran his Black History courses at the same place where I did my my Black Holistic Health course. And me and my sister Vanika, we're actually proud graduates of Robin Walker's Black History courses. Put some ones in the chat if you know about Robin Walker's Black History courses. Put some ones in the chat if you know how powerful this guy is. One of the best Black history teachers, if not the best in the world, yeah? So me and my sister, we've done pretty much all of his courses. So we're proud graduates of his courses. And it's a proud moment to know that I graduated from his courses and then created my own course and started doing it at the same place where he runs his course. So this used to be a physical course. It's now an e-learning course on the Hidden Science Academy website. And it's for VIP members only. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But a lot of people, when I put together this course, a lot of people were asking me, why is it the Hidden Science of Black Holistic Health? Why not just the Hidden Science of Holistic Health? I got that a lot over the years. And the answer is very simple. Because in the UK, Black people are very sick. According to who? Leon Marshall? No, according to them. They're always telling us that Black people are more likely to, you know, die from this. Black people are more likely to die from that. Black people are more likely to have high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, prostate cancer, all of that stuff. They always say that. Pretty much every month there's something in the news about Black people more likely to, yeah? It's got so bad that on the NHS Choices website, there's a section specifically for us. And it says Black health issues. If you're African or African Caribbean and you live in the UK, you're more likely than people from other cultures to have certain health conditions, including high blood pressure, diabetes, and prostate cancer. Now, when you hear something like that, when you read something like that, what's the logical question to ask? Someone in the chat, help me out. What's the logical question to ask when you hear something like that? Why? Thank you. Why? So NHS asked the experts why, and here's what they said. The experts aren't sure why these conditions are more common in people of African or African Caribbean origin, but they think it might be linked to diet, lifestyle, and different ways of storing fat in the body. And then it says, there are several ways to reduce your risk of these conditions. Find out how to protect yourself against diabetes, high blood pressure, and prostate cancer. In other words, we don't know the cause, but we know how to treat the effects. Yeah, we don't know the cause, but we can treat the effects. So again, stuff like this made me put together the course because I really wanted to know the truth. And a lot of people want to know the truth these days. Yeah. And check this out. I actually done this as a search on Google yesterday. Seasonal allergies more common in Black children. Black children were roughly twice as likely to have environmental or seasonal allergies. Look at the percentages. And current asthma compared to whites. Again, the logical question to ask is what? Why? Why would Black children have more allergies than other children? Why? So a lot of people want to find out the truth. And speaking of the truth, I think the best way to find out the truth is to ask questions. This is the best way to get to the bottom of things, asking questions. So throughout this webinar, I'm going to be asking you guys questions, if that's okay. Is that okay? That's a question, by the way. So put some yes or no. Okay, people saying cool, yes. All right. So here's the first question, and answer it as honestly as you can. First question. What's more important, the truth or your opinion? This is a no judgment zone. So these are just questions. A lot of people saying the truth, a lot of truth. Everyone's saying the truth, the truth, the truth. That's more important to you. Okay, the truth. Okay, next question. How much money do you spend on food per week? Roughly, if anyone would like to share, roughly. How much money do you spend on food per week, roughly? Would anyone like to share? 120 pounds, 40 pounds, 100 pounds, 150 pounds, 80 pounds, okay? 120, yeah, it definitely varies. A lot of people saying over 100 though. Okay, all right, question 3. To solve any problem, should you focus on the cause of the problem or the effects? To solve any problem, should you focus on the cause of the problem or the effects? A lot of people saying the cause. All right, now, when I'm teaching science, I like to keep things simple, yeah? And I like to use analogies. So think of this analogy as, if you will, yeah? I like to use this analogy when I'm teaching science. If you had a fish in a fishbowl and the fish was sick, what would you do? Would you treat the fish or change the water? What would be the logical thing to do if you had a fish that was sick? Some people saying treat the fish, some people saying change the water, some people saying both, treat the fish and change the water. A lot of people saying change the water. Yeah, a lot of people saying both. A lot of people saying both. All right, but some of you said change the water, because logic would say the fish is only going to be as healthy as the water is swimming in. Now, I like to use this analogy because you can look at the fish as yourself and the fishbowl as the environment that you live in. So you're only going to be as healthy as the environment that you live in. But I like to take it one step further. You could look at the fish as your cells and the fishbowl as your body, because what we tend to forget is the human body is over 70% water. So your cells are only going to be as healthy as the water they're swimming in. Keep that in mind as we go on. All right, now as this webinar will focus heavily on the science of hay fever, it makes sense to start with a definition of science that is easy to understand. So here's my definition. Science is logic backed up by evidence. This is my personal definition. So logic to me is just common sense. And then you back up your common sense with proof. So for example, if I was to ask you what's 2 + 2, I'm hoping that your common sense would say 4. But what if I said, can you prove that? Back that up. Can you prove that? The easiest way to prove it is to put 2 fingers on one hand, put 2 fingers on the other, and count them out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's your proof. So science to me is just logic, just common sense backed up with proof, backed up with evidence. And when I start to use my own definition of science, because there's loads of definitions out there, but when I start to use my own, I started to realize that science is simple. Science is simple, which I find amazing, because when I was learning science, the way they taught it to me was so confusing. When I was at university, it was just so confusing the way they taught the science. But when I teach science, I like to keep things super simple. And one of the reasons why I like to keep things super simple is because a wise man once said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. That was Albert Einstein, arguably one of the greatest scientists of all time. So if he can keep it simple, why can't we? So throughout today's webinar, I'm going to keep things super simple because to me, science is just 2 + 2. Or, as another wise man once said,
boom. 2 + 2 is 4. -1, that's 3. Quick maths.
Quick maths. That's all science is to me, just quick maths. Yeah. And people in the chat who have seen me break down science before, they know I break it down in a very simplified way. But I'm curious, if this is your first time at a Hidden Science Academy webinar, put some ones in the chat. If this is your first time at a Hidden Science Academy webinar, put some ones in the chat. First time, ones, quite a few first timers. Ones, what? Wow. All right. For all the people that are putting ones in the chat right now, I've got one thing to say to you.
You're gonna learn today. You're gonna learn today.
So what are you gonna learn today? This is what we're going through. Foods to avoid, natural antihistamines, best vitamins to take, natural home remedies, best herbs for hay fever, essential oils for allergies, and I'm going to cover right at the end how to get rid of allergies for good. So stay right to the end if you can. All right, and we've got some powerful speakers. We've got Leah Salmon, who's the Natural You coach. She's going to be joining us a little bit later. You can see her there, but she's going to be speaking about foods and she's going to be talking about natural home remedies as well. So big up Leah. But before Leah speaks, and for those of you who have come to our events, you've probably seen Leah Salmon because she's usually the host at a lot of our Hidden Science Academy events. But before Leah, we've got a sis by the name of Jennifer J, who calls herself the Herbal Alchemist. Now she studies herbs, the science behind herbs. So she's going to be breaking down the science behind herbs, telling you what herbs are really good for hay fever and allergies in general. So it's going to be very powerful information we're going to be sharing with you tonight. But before I hand it over to Jennifer, I've got one last question for everyone. This is the one last question before I hand it over to Jennifer. How many people do you think will do the things we suggest to get rid of their hay fever or their allergies for good tonight? Because we're going to be sharing some very powerful information. But how many, as a percentage, what do you reckon? As a percentage, 100%, 50%, 80%, 20%, 40%, 50%, 70%. Okay, quite high numbers. Some people saying 40. All right. Does anyone know who this is? This is Jim Rohn, and he's arguably one of the best, motivational speakers, because a lot of people look up to Tony Robbins. But Tony Robbins, this is his mentor, and he's got a lot of lectures. You guys can check him out on YouTube when you get a chance. But he says when it comes to people changing their life, especially for the better, when it comes to changing your health or changing something that you do in your lifestyle, he says some do and some don't. And if he was pushed to give it a percentage, he said it's 90-10. 90-10, with 90% being the people who, you tell me, what's the 90%? The people who do or don't? The people who do change or the people who don't? Yes, the 90% is the people who don't change. So we're going to be sharing some powerful information on how you can get rid of your allergies for good. 90% of you won't do it. Unfortunately, that's the statistic according to Jim Rohn. So I'm hoping we got some 10%ers who take this information on, and it helps them and their family. Now, with that being said, I'm going to pass over to my first special guest. Jennifer, how are you doing, sis?
Hi, I am very well, Leon. Very well,
Excellent.
thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, people in the chat, if you can just let Jen know if you can hear her, just put some ones in the chat. Let's just test out the hearing. So over to you, sis. I don't know if you're going to do like a PowerPoint presentation or you're just going to talk.
Just a quick PowerPoint presentation. Now, I have to say that where I live, we have issues with reception.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm going to freeze or anything like that, but it has happened before, but it's outside of my control.
All right.
And so I'm just going to share my screen if I can find my power.
Now, if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A section, but there is going to be a short 5-minute Q&A after Jennifer's finished with her PowerPoint presentation. So if you do have any questions, you can put it in the Q&A. or you can wait and ask your question live after we finish. All right, over to you, sis.
Okay, now, so I'm just going to be running through some natural remedies for hay fever, and I will say that I've never had hay fever myself, but I have a son, my oldest son, who suffers very, very badly from hay fever. And I'm a third generational herbalist. I call myself a herbal alchemist because most of the herbs, most of what I know about herbalism, I learned from my mother. She learned from her mother. But my mother's teachings only brought me to a certain point. And I learned a lot more about herbalism and studied more about the herbs when I was given some shock news that I had cervical cancer. And I had to go into some real deep research. My mother couldn't help me. She didn't know what herbs to use. So I had to do some deep research and investigations myself. I found out what I needed to find out. I created my own compound, my own formula. And when I went back to the hospital and they did all the tests and everything, they couldn't find any cancer and they were rather perplexed and wanted to know what I did. So I did the similar thing with my son when he suffered with this really bad hay fever. And I just pulled together some herbs that I read about and tested them practically on him. And after about maybe 3 or 4 different variations of herbs, because not all herbs work for the same people who might have the same issue. I have to say that they don't. And we came up with something that really worked for him because he was suffering, as you can see in the picture here. This is just the scientific name for hay fever, allergic rhinitis. And he was suffering from all of that, the eye irritation, the ear irritation, the throat, the swelling, the nasal drip. He had the works. And so I came up with my own formula. And he was only 11 at the time. He's 33 now. And he doesn't need to have the tea as much because also when it comes to hay fever, you have to look at your diet. It can't just be to suppress the hay fever symptoms. You have to look at your diet, what you're eating, and what you're not giving your body. So let's move on to the immunity. This is the biggest part when it comes to hay fever because your immune system is basically your soldiers. And the immune system is kind of like a cup when it comes to hay fever. So it has the capacity to cope with the allergens that are around us. But that capacity has a limit. And so you won't usually get the symptoms until your system's cup runneth over. When the cup is full, when the cup has reached its limit. And it reaches its limit when we keep having a consumption of these denatured foods, which are like refined carbohydrates, refined sugar, meat, dairy, junk food. When we have that as just a consumption of food and we don't have any of the other live living foods, then your immune system's capacity to cope with the allergens is reduced. So when we're talking about the lungs, which is the lower respiratory tract, water or hydration is paramount, but not just water, it's also water and oil. Oil and fats are often ignored when it comes to hydration. We tend to only think of them in terms of just water. I've got to drink a lot of water. And we tend to forget about oils and fats. If you take your car, for instance, you can put you can put your water in the car, you can put your petrol in the car, but without the oil, the car's not going to go very far. When you've got metal rubbing against metal, things are going to start to break down. So fats lock the moisture inside the body because every single cell membrane in the body is coated in fats. It's coated in a sheath called the myelin sheath, and it coats absolutely everything. And that is actually a fatty bilayer. So oils and fats are absolutely paramount when it comes to hydration. So you can be drinking lots of water, and what will happen is that the water will run right through you and come right out, and it won't go into the cells, because it needs the oil that acts like a layer, a bilayer, or like a boundary to lock the hydration of the water into the cells. So without sufficient oils, the water levels cannot be maintained in the body. And like I said, the water will just run right out of the body. When it comes to natural herbs and foods for hay fever, we're going to really focus on this word here called quercetin. And I won't be able to go through all 16 foods and herbs because of the time constraints. So what is quercetin? Quercetin is a plant flavonoid, and it's one of the key polyphenols that are presented in plants, fruits, and veg. They all tend to have some form of quercetin in them. And the flavonoids, what they do, they enhance the function of the vitamin C, and that helps the vitamin C to be better absorbed into the body. And quercetin also works synergistically with vitamin C, like side by side. And it is a very powerful antioxidant. And what it does, it brings about a certain amount of protection against allergies, not just hay fever, but what's the other one? Asthma and eczema. And it prepares your body to fight off these hay fever symptoms. And so the histamine is what the immune system will release when it reads these the allergens and the and the pollen like an enemy. It will send off this histamine response. So what quercetin does, it will stop the release of histamine in the body. So the best foods for hay fever seasons are the ones that are loaded with quercetins, and foods such as tomatoes, broccoli, leafy green greens, apples, berries, red grapes, lots of citrus fruits, onions, black tea or green tea. There's also watercress, and also pineapple is quite rich in it. But if you Google it, there's a load of foods there that's very, very rich in quercetin, and those are the best ones for you to take if you suffer from hay fever. And what a lot of people tend to do is when they actually are in the throes of the hay fever symptoms, they now want to pile all kinds of things inside their bodies to try and stop or to relieve themselves from the hay fever. But it's actually best to start. It says here 4 to 6 weeks. I would even go as far to say start 2 months before the start of the allergy season. And so we're going to have a look at some simple spice rack remedies for hay fever. And turmeric, a good all-time favorite, is a root plant of the ginger family, which has been used in Indian and Chinese medicine forever. This is a very, very good active component, the curcumin, to use when you've got hay fever. You can make it in a tea, you can add it in your foods. Excuse me. Turmeric has anti-allergen, I can't pronounce that word, has anti-allergic properties, and it helps to block the mast cells from releasing the histamines. And garlic is a natural antibiotic, and it boosts the immune system. When you've got hay fever, the biggest thing is that you have to try and eat foods that are going to boost your immune system, to boost your soldiers, to get the soldiers to stand up and be robust and to be strong. And garlic is one of the most fantastic remedies to use for hay fever. It's rich in quercetin. It's a natural antihistamine, and also when you eat the garlic or you cook with the garlic, it's got a very strong decongestion effect, and it helps to reduce the sinus pressure. Ginger is an all-time favorite again. Ginger can strengthen the immune system, and it's another natural antihistamine. Very powerful anti-inflammatory properties that reduces the nasal swellings and other symptoms. And with all the other, you can have turmeric, you can have ginger, you can make those two into a tea, and that will make them super potent and super powerful. And you can drink them 2 to 3 times a day or more if you wish. Another one is cumin. And most of these you can have like in the powder form, even garlic if you can't, because sometimes I know garlic's going to make your breath smell. So you can have that in a powder form, a capsule form if you wish. With cumin, this is a very good digestive spice. And with hay fever, sometimes the body gets what we call damp, internal dampness, which is where you get, when people who have that runny nose, what it is, there's a lot of damp, a lot of water accumulation inside the body. And so the nose just keeps on dripping, 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 no matter how much times they wipe it. This is a very good spice that will actually dry up the excess dampness and the congestion and the wetness. Elderberry, I'm sure you guys have heard of elderberry. It's been around forever. It's been used for so many different things out here in the herbal world. It's a very strong and potent antioxidant, and it also has quercetin in it. And you can have this every day yourself. You can drink elderberry every day. In fact, you can drink it all day. The thing about herbs like elderberry, that whatever you take inside your body, the body will take what it needs, and then what it will do, it will get rid of what it doesn't need. It will just come out in the urine. So elderberry is a really, really great one to have with ginger and turmeric. Now, bromelain is an enzyme that's found in pineapple, and that has been shown to have some great results in relieving hay fever in a number of clinical studies. And it's also a natural antihistamine, anti-inflammatory, and also an anti-decongestant to remove all of that phlegm and the mucus out of the lungs and the airways. And apples, would you believe it? Apples is one of the best sources of quercetin, and it's been shown to effectively, because it's one of the fruits that my son lives on when he had the hay fever, and it just seemed to work perfectly well. It just seemed to, you know, help relieve the hay fever symptoms. And what it actually does, it stabilizes the cell membranes, and all it does is try to prevent the release of histamine. So it is a natural antihistamine. So, and yep, sweet potatoes, very nutritious. And it doesn't have as much quercetin in it, but what it does, it has so much vitamin C in it, and it's a very strong antioxidant out of all of the potatoes. So I've put it up here because if you make a meal with it and you add the ginger and you add the turmeric to it, it's really going to add to their potency. This is a really fantastic food, red onion. It has 19.93 milligrams of quercetin, whether you eat it hot or raw. This is also very good for decongestion and nasal blockages. Every time I cook with onions, my eyes are streaming, my nose is streaming, you know, everything's just running. So this is something that people who have hay fever should really use a lot of in salads, in sandwiches, or just eating it raw by itself, regardless of the very strong onion breath. It's better than the actual white onion, because the red onion has just that little bit more quercetin, and it tends to be a little bit more potent in its kind of pepperiness than I find than the white onion. Now, with the herbs, I found that the strongest herb of all was nettles. And in doing my research, I found that nettles had the highest proportion of quercetin. And it's also, and nettles is actually an all-rounder. It's a very strong blood tea, very strong in, I use it a lot in my blood tonics for anemia. And it's very, very, very powerful. And I didn't realize at the time that it had quercetin in it. I've just discovered that when I was doing my research, but it has a high amount of quercetin in it. So if you have got hay fever, get some nettles tea, and it's a natural antihistamine. And along with, I think it's called ginkgo. Ginkgo has got 7 antihistamines. And I can't quite remember how much nettles has, but I know it has a large amount of antihistamines in it. And as well as the vitamin K, because you need vitamin K with the carotene, which is, it's got a lot of vitamin C in the carotene. So out of all of the herbs, I will actually say stinging nettles is the most potent one to have as a cup of tea. And once again, try and have it way before the allergy season starts. In fact, drink it all year round, because you're not just going to get benefits from it just because you have hay fever. It's also going to have all the other added benefits that it has. It's got a chock load of minerals in it: magnesium, manganese, zinc, and all of that we naturally need anyway. So if you are drinking it way before allergy season, you should be able to manage the season, or you might not even be affected when it comes along. If you use all the others and you use them all kind of like in conjunction with each other, you're going to build yourself quite a strong army in your immune system to kind of tackle the hay fever symptoms. Rose hips is another one that's rich. Rose hips comes from the rose family. And rose hips, she's chocker full of vitamin C as well. And when people have hay fever, they are depleted of vitamin C because of what is happening in the lungs and in the throat and the upper respiratory and the lower respiratory. So when you're taking the nettles, you're taking the rose hips, and they're all chock full of vitamin C. So they really do help for hay fever sufferers, as well as being anti-inflammatory. They do support the immune system, which is what you want when you've got hay fever. And good old thyme. Thyme doesn't have as much quercetin in it, but I put her here because she deserves a mention, because she's got very good properties for bronchitis, she's got very good properties for chest congestion, and she's a very strong and powerful antioxidant. Also want to make a very quick mention here about steam inhalations. Steam inhalations help you when you have your head over a pot of herbs. It could be peppermint, it could be eucalyptus, and you cover your head over the bowl of warm water and you inhale it, and that is super, super helpful to help with the nasal passage and the throat and the lungs. And lastly, we've got probiotics. Probiotics is all about the gut microbiome. And I've actually put a bowl of sauerkraut here because some people do, some people might not know, but sauerkraut is natural probiotics made out of cabbage and salt. And sometimes you can add carrots in there if you wish. If you are going to use sauerkraut as a probiotic, use the one that you get in the fridge, not the one on the shelf. The one on the shelf is pasteurized, so therefore they have like killed all the probiotics out of it. Get the one that's kept in the fridge in the health store. That is really, 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 really good to help you because the gut is where most of the immune system is, in our gut. So we really do have to take care of our gut, and probiotics will do just that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. And that's the end of my presentation. I've run out of time.
Thank you, sis. Put some ones in the chat, people. Put some ones in the chat. Show your appreciation for Jennifer J, the Herbal Alchemist. Show some appreciation. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. People saying great presentation. That was great, sis. Excellent. Straight to the point. Now we are going to do a very short Q&A. So if anyone wants to go live, hold on, before we even do that, let me just make sure. All right, I'm going to lower everyone's hands. If you want to ask a question live now, because there were questions in the chat, we're going to give 2 people the chance to ask a question live if they want to ask Jen a question live. So I see Heather, you've put your hand up, and Bianca. So Heather and Bianca, you're the 2 that are going to ask questions. So Heather, you can go first. Bianca.
Hello. Hi.
Sorry, Heather.
Hiya. Hi, Leon. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. That was brilliant, amazing. Such a wealth of information, really useful. Do you have a book or a leaflet or something that you sell? Where can we find you to get your information and support your business to help get this information from you?
I'll put my website in the chat. My website is called Herbalist in the Hood. And I don't have a book, no. Herbalistinthehood.co.uk. That's my website page where you can go, where I have my products for sale. But no, I don't have a book, not yet, I should say.
Do you do consultations with people?
Pardon me?
Do you do consultations with people?
Yes, I do consultations. There's a section on my website where you can read up about all the consultations that I offer. But yeah, I do consultations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sis. And if you stay to the end, we've got something very special for people who thought that Jennifer's presentation was amazing. She's going to be part of an offer that we're going to give you. And it's going to involve her presenting you with a short course. So you don't want to miss that very powerful course that we're going to present at the end. So thank you for that. Bianca, we're only going to take 2 questions because we've got to move on. So Bianca.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, when we have the nettles, how do we kind of boil it and not take the nettles?
It wouldn't be fresh nettles. Fresh nettles, you'll get stung. I would say buy the nettles dry. You can get them dry in a tea bag. You can get them in many health stores. I've seen them. I think one company called Floridix, they do their own nettles tea. They're quite a very good company. But no, you wouldn't use the fresh herb. Not even I would use the fresh herb, because you've got to take the sting out first before you can use it. But it's best to use it dried. It's the same, you get the same quality with it dried, and it will be the same benefits.
Thank you for that, sis. Now, a lot of people are asking, are you going to answer the questions in the Q&A? So Jennifer, myself, and Leah, we will, throughout the webinar at various points, go into the Q&A and answer.
There's a lot of questions.
There is, but just work your way through them. Whatever question you want to answer, you type it in and then the question actually goes away. So we'll try and work through the questions. Because we want to move on. I know there was a lot of hands that went up, but we will do a Q&A after Leah's presentation as well. So on to our next speaker now, the Naturally You coach, the wonderful, the amazing Leah Salmon.
Greetings, family. Can you hear me, bruv?
Very well, sis. Very well.
Excellent. Okay, lovely. So I'm going to share my screen now. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on another amazing Hidden Science, fantastic, phenomenal, free webinar brought to us by the Hidden Science Academy. Lovely to see my sister Vanika in the chat and my brother Leon, and it was wonderful to hear Jennifer, because I've heard of Jennifer before, but I've never actually seen her speak, so that was lovely. So I'm going to, what am I going to do? What in the world am I doing? I'm meant to be showing a PowerPoint presentation, which, there we go. Play start, baby. I know how to use PowerPoint. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. So this is the Hidden Science of Hayfever. The lovely Jennifer's spoken a lot about food and vitamins. She's spoken about a lot of the things that I've got in this presentation, so I'll be able to go over those more quickly. So I'm going to be focusing on food, vitamins, and some simple home remedies for hay fever. A bit about me, if you haven't already met me through the Hidden Science Academy or the other work that I do online. I'm a homeschooling mother of 6 children and 1 angel boy. I'm a best-selling author of 6 books, a speaker, nutritionist, and life coach. I do live blood analysis. I'm focused on Black women's health predominantly, and I specialize in menstrual, womb and pregnancy health, premature birth prevention, and personal development. And today we're going to be talking obviously about hay fever. So Jennifer spoke about this already, but just a quick visual as to what happens when our body has these responses around this time. And there's lots of names for it: the allergic rhinitis, you know, like rhinoceros, big nose. And then itis is the inflammation of, so when you see the itis at the end of any word, it's saying the inflammation of, so it's the inflammation of the tissues inside the nasal passage and the upper respiratory, having a reaction to something that not everybody would normally have a reaction to. So the more we live in this, the more we live in this world, and the more humans mess around with nature, basically, we are becoming more susceptible to becoming allergic to things that we lived in very much harmony with for our whole human existence. And it's not necessarily the environment so much that's changing, because the environment is changing, trust me, like, you know, they're polluting the air and the water and the everything, but our bodies are also being subjected to a lot of changes, which means that we can't even handle, you know, there's Black people putting on suntan lotion because they feel that they can't bathe their body in the natural sun that we used to show reverence and admiration to because of how amazing it was for us. And yeah, more and more people are becoming allergic to things that we weren't before, and pollen is one of those. So when you have what they typically call hay fever, you can actually have a combination of allergic responses to different things. It's not always actually pollen that comes from flowers. Sometimes it's something called ragweed, which a lot of people have heard of. Sometimes it's dander. Sometimes it's just more dust being in the air. Whatever it is, your body is having an allergic reaction to it. So when it comes into your body, in the same way you have if you have a food allergy, when you take that food in, your body has an internal system that makes sure anything that comes in is safe. If it's not safe, your body does things to try and get rid of it. So when we have all of these, you know, everything's pouring out of us when we're having hay fever reactions, it's our body senses the pollen or the ragweed or whatever it is that's come into our nasal passage, breathed in, into our ears, around our eyes. And it's like, oh my gosh, we need to get rid of this. This is something dangerous for us. So it stimulates the release of lots of mucus to wrap up those dangerous things and eliminate them. And it eliminates them very efficiently, which is why we're blowing our nose constantly and rubbing because of that irritation that's happening. So essentially the chemical that's released to say get rid of all of these horrible things that have come into us is histamine, which is why when you go to the pharmacy, they give you an antihistamine. And an antihistamine is something that stops the production of that chemical that gives you the allergic response. So typically we do want to have a healthy immune response. We want to have a healthy response to things that could potentially harm us. But what happens with hay fever and seasonal allergies is that your body overreacts. It's like autoimmunity when your body starts attacking healthy cells. Your body has a slight overreaction to something that is not actually as dangerous as your body thinks it is. So that's basically what happens when you have hay fever, which is why some people have very mild symptoms. As soon as, you know, the pollen starts growing on the trees again and the flowers come up, some people, they're like, you know, a bit of pollen comes in, their body's like, oh, is that dangerous? Is it not? Oh, it's not that dangerous. So some people get a little symptom at the beginning of the season and then they're fine. And that's how some people kind of know to check the pollen count. And why am I sneezing a bit more? My eyes are a bit runny, and then it stops. But for other people, they're getting hay fever from like February to October. It just seems completely unfair how much some people are getting it compared to somebody else. Like someone said to me the other day, oh, I'm getting really bad hay fever. I was like, oh, what are your symptoms? They had like 2 bouts of runny nose and 1 itchy eye in the last 3 weeks. I was like, fam, you ain't got no. You don't have the eyes streaming hay fever, but that was their experience, and it was bad enough for them to want to ask. And no one should be uncomfortable to any degree. So the information that we're going to be sharing, that Jennifer shared and that Leon's sharing, should help whatever level you are at. I'm not trying to judge anyone's level of reaction here. So the foods that I'm going to be looking at are low histamine foods, high histamine foods, and antihistamine foods. So basically, there are a group, the way that some people manage this using their food is if you are producing too many histamines because of the pollen that's coming in, because of the natural pollen that's coming in, if you're also eating foods that have similar properties to histamine, or they actually have histamine in them, which are the high histamine food, it will make your symptoms even worse. So if you were one of those people that would have only got a slight reaction, but you're eating a lot of histamine foods, your reaction will be even worse, which is why when people change their diet, their reactions can completely go, because it's actually the histamine in their food they're taking in too much of it, and it's triggering their own histamine, and they're having a much bigger reaction. It's the same way when sisters take in foods that are similar to estrogens, they're xenoestrogens, then that triggers an excess response to estrogen in their body, and then they start having the high estrogen, menstrual type challenges. So if you are having these reactions, you want to focus on having low histamine foods that either don't have any histamine or they don't trigger histamine at all. Avoid the high histamine foods, and also aim to include antihistamine foods. So the sister Jennifer mentioned some of the antihistamine. So low histamine means they don't have a lot. High histamine means they have a lot. Antihistamine are the foods that actually stop your body producing too much histamine. So you want to focus on the low and the antihistamine food, but that's what basically the different terms mean. So some low histamine foods are most nuts, apart from cashews and peanuts, most well-prepared beans and lentils. So there's a picture there of soaked beans and lentils. Most of us know that back in the day, our parents didn't just open a dry bag of beans and start cooking it. We used to soak them things overnight. That was tradition. That was standard behavior. We're having rice and peas because everything was soaked on Saturday night. If nothing got soaked on Saturday night, there was no rice and peas the next day until we had the tins and stuff like that. That's because ancestrally, our ancestors knew that there was this layer of anti-nutrient on our beans and lentils and grains and rice and things like that, that protected these foods in nature, but they need to be soaked off before you cook them. Otherwise, you end up eating those anti-nutrients, phytic acid, in fact, and it binds the nutrients into the food, so you don't actually get as much nutrients from the food either. So well-prepared beans and lentils are beans and lentils and rice that's been soaked overnight, then allowed to sprout. So you soak it overnight, pour the water off, then allow it to just be in nature, and that creates a live food, which is easier to cook and quicker to cook, and you get more nutrients from it. So those beans and lentils are considered low histamine foods. They don't trigger many reactions. The healthy fat and the minerals that you find in the nuts is what makes those the low histamine food. And the sister spoke about the benefits of healthy fat. Most vegetables are also said to be low histamine food, apart from mushrooms, peas, aubergines, pumpkin, green beans, and string beans. Okay, so those are some of the low histamine foods. Some of the high histamine foods are things like fermented foods, like sauerkraut, rice beer, ketchup, kefir, kombucha, fermented meats, those kind of things, soya, tinned fish, and tinned beans and lentils. Now, the sister just spoke about the benefit of probiotics, and probiotics are super important for our digestive tract. Our digestive tract is about 80% of our immune system, and we do want to make sure we do have healthy gut flora. And I talk about and I promote probiotics all the time. But what can happen with some people will have a great reaction to food-based fermented foods, food-based fermented sources of probiotics. Other people will have a not so great reaction to that, because it's not necessarily that the fermented foods themselves aren't healthy. They are healthy, but that process of fermentation can sometimes also create a level of histamine in the food. And the thing is, because it's kind of difficult to quantify the amount of histamine in all foods. Some foods are quite obvious. Other foods, it's challenging to know which ones are causing a higher histamine reaction, which ones are not. The sauerkraut, like the sister said, that is raw is more likely to be unreactive, and the sauerkraut that you normally find, the ones like the beer and the ketchup and the kombucha, which hasn't been prepared as efficiently, those ones tend to trigger more reactions. The other consideration with some fermented foods, like kombucha specifically and wine, the ones that are so fermented they almost become alcoholic, is that they become slightly alcoholic. And that alcohol then starts creating the unfriendly and the unhealthy gut fermentation. So those are some of the foods that are considered to be high histamine that you may want to reduce your consumption of. Now, the foods that are said to be antihistamine foods, the ones that actually turn off that excess histamine production are the ones the sisters already mentioned: the turmeric, the ginger, the garlic, the onions, but also things like moringa. We know in the Black community, we have this new discovered love of moringa, and it is incredibly nutrient rich and really beneficial when it comes to supporting the immune system, and providing all the nutrients that your white blood cells need to efficiently work. Because the thing is, you want your immune system to still work. You still want your immune system to be there to wrap up any excess toxins that do come in, but you don't want that overreaction of histamine. So that's why the sister was talking so much about vitamin C, and all the nutrients in moringa also provide that. Now, you've also got bee pollen and local honey. So because people will typically be reacting to the pollen that's in the area, in the flowers in the area at that time, another thing that's kind of ancestrally known, just something that most people have always spoken about, is the fact that if you eat honey that's made from the local flowers and you eat the bee pollen made from the local flowers, then because it's almost like the true vaccination reaction, the same premise that homeopathy is made on, as well, that if you take in a small amount of these foods, your body gets used to them. So then when you take them in again in another time, your body's already said, oh, no, we've already checked this out and it's fine and it's not going to cause us problems, so we don't need to have a reaction to it. Or if it is something that needs to have an immune response or create antibodies, the smaller dose that you take it in, your body creates those antibodies. So when you take it in again, it doesn't cause as many problems. So local bee honey and local honey itself, if you can get it, those are also really beneficial things to start taking, just small amounts a day. Like the dry bee pollen, you only need like 5 to 6 grains a day. When I first bought it, I did actually give everyone in my house like half a teaspoon before I read the back of the package, because I'm used to buying the fresh frozen bee pollen. You could take good amounts of that, but the dry one is a bit more potent. So if you live in Luton, Bedfordshire, that area, there's a brother called Mr. Rob's Honey. There's a company called Ooh Skincare up here in Birmingham in the West Midlands, and they produce their local honey up here. So Ooh Skincare in Birmingham, Mr. Rob's Honey, is in the Bedfordshire area. And I'm sure in London you'll be able to find some local beekeepers as well, where you can get your products from. Also probiotics and prebiotics. So again, it's important to keep the gut healthy. Probiotics are the actual friendly bacteria that live in your gut and that support your immune system and your digestion. Prebiotics are the food that those probiotics feed on. So it's the insoluble fibers that our body doesn't really make much use of, apart from to bulk up our stool. But the probiotics, the friendly bacteria, they actually use them as a food source, so it keeps your gut nice and healthy. And actually, onions and garlic are two of the food that are brilliant prebiotics, as well as things like berries and bananas, etc. Oily fish and healthy fat foods are also very important. Now, if you're like allergic to nuts and you're allergic to seeds and you're on a budget, and the only healthy fat source you can afford or that's practical for you to take into your diet is oily fish, then oily fish, do your best you can with that. If you can use nuts and seeds, then I would recommend that, we kind of move away from we move away from oily fish, just because of how polluted the oceans are. Like, I delayed watching the Netflix documentary Seaspiracy because I knew it was going to tell me I had to stop eating my beloved salmon. And it did a very good job of doing that. So, but again, I was talking to my client about this today. We know that the seas are polluted and the air's polluted and all these kind of things. But what's most important is that you do the best that you can with your resources and what is around you and what you have access to. So oily fish is not the worst thing in the world if it means that you taking in oily fish a couple of times a week means that you're going to get enough healthy fat to keep your immune system healthy and your joints and your brain and the cell membranes and all those kind of things healthy. But if you're in a position to make a better choice and you can rely on and you have more access to things like nuts, raw nuts and raw seeds, and chia seeds are amazing source of healthy fat, and hemp and all these kind of things, then aim to do those. The nutrients, and again, we've spoken about this, that are beneficial to take in when you've got hay fever are things like vitamin C and zinc. Those are the two nutrients that our white blood cells are actually need to be created healthfully. And as you know, most of you know, I do live blood analysis, so I can see when you're deficient in zinc and vitamin C, and I can also see the benefits of someone adding vitamin C and zinc to their diet, even for a number of weeks, and then coming back and seeing the difference. And there's normally a great difference. Vitamin A and vitamin D are also, so those are fat soluble vitamins, which is why it's good. We need to make sure we're getting in a lot of healthy fat so that these vitamins have the basis to be metabolized into the body more healthfully. Those are two, like vitamin D is a big part of our immune system. And some people would even call it a hormone of the immune system as opposed to just a regular vitamin. And as people of color who are more melanin dominant, we just need to make sure that we're getting out into the sunlight for at least 20 to 30 minutes a day, twice a day, so that our body can produce that adequate levels of vitamin D, and make sure you don't wash your skin for 20 minutes afterwards. And then the quercetin and selenium, the sister spoke about quercetin and all the foods you can find that in, and the selenium, which is another amazing part of the immune system. And selenium, you can find that in a lot of, again, raw nuts and seeds like Brazil nuts and pumpkin seeds and things like that. You want to definitely recommend, I definitely recommend at this time, there's so many reasons to aim to avoid or reduce these foods, but wheat, dairy, and sugar, right now, it's just not the time. If you have severe symptoms and you're taking in wheat and dairy, both of those can produce mucus in the system, whether you've got pollen around you or not. So if your body is already producing histamine to wrap up and get rid of all of the pollen that it's coming in contact with, and then you're taking in dairy that's producing even more mucus, then you're just adding more misery. And it's been shown that some people can take like 9 days to stop their reaction to dairy. So they have dairy on one day and then they are reacting to that dairy for 9 straight days afterwards. The same with wheat, the same with sugar. It can take a long time for these things to work their way out of our system. So if you do have really strong reactions, now is the time to really give yourself a break from these foods so that your body only has one thing to do, which is build its immunity, nourish itself, and not have to do that, plus deal with the negative side effects of the overconsumption of wheat and dairy and sugar. And the cow, look at the poor cow, it just gets pumped up with every different kind of hormone to make it more money and to make it produce more milk and more meat. And then we're taking all of that in as well. So our body then has all of that to deal with, as well as the pollen or the ragweed or whatever it is you're reacting to. So some lifestyle hacks that you can use at the moment is getting a good air filter. Now, to be honest, we don't want to have to rely on these lifestyle hacks, but what is beneficial to do is to look at your diet to make sure you're not taking in anything that's going to cause more problems. At the same time, you're adding foods to your diet that support your immune system and rebuild you. And then at the same time, you're also doing these lifestyle hacks to make your environment, like the brother was talking about the fishbowl, to make your environment more conducive to healing, until you can get to the point where you can just more or less live your life and you don't have to stick to these as religiously. But initially, these can be useful. So getting a good air filter that you use, especially in the evening when you've closed the windows, so that it can take up the excess pollen from the air. Because what normally happens is during the day when everyone's moving around and the flowers are actually open, they're obviously releasing a lot more pollen into the air. Then in the evening time, if you look on the grass and you start to see the flowers closing their petals, at that time, all the pollen that was in the air starts settling. If your windows are open, they will settle in your house, which is why it's a good idea to, like it says, close your windows around 6 o'clock. Aim not to hang your clothes outside where they pick up all the pollen and then you bring them in and you're putting them on and you're breathing your pollen in. Like people will hang their bed sheets out and they have really bad allergies and they'll lie on the bed and then sleep all through the night and they're taking it all in the night. So good air filter, aim not to hang your clothes outside until you are in a better position to. Aim to close your windows around 6 o'clock, and then the air filter, if it's a fan as well, can provide you with that good air circulation. Like the sister was talking about, steam inhalation every few days. And there's also salt pipes that you can also get that help to strengthen the mucous membrane in your upper respiratory and help reduce your histamine reactions. And like the sister said, always remember water. Water is so important. And if you're dehydrated, that actually in and of itself can trigger more histamine production. So, I mean, on a day like this, it's obviously easy, but you don't want to do anything. You don't want to miss out on something as simple to do as drinking water if it's going to help you so much. Plus, when you're releasing all of these liquids, you also need to be making sure you're replacing all these liquids that you're blowing out as well. Otherwise, you will create chronic dehydration in yourself. Now, what's going to be apparent in any time you listen to a presentation like this is that some of this information, you're going to hear it and you're like, oh, I've tried that and it doesn't work for me and that does and blah, 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 blah. And that's because what's most important is that you know yourself. If there's information that you haven't tried that we've spoken about, but you've tried everything else and that hasn't worked, then try the other things. Like the brother said at the beginning, most people are only 10% of people are probably going to try this anyway. But use the information to try things that you haven't already to see if they work. And if you know something is giving you some kind of a result, then stick to that. If you know something is not working for you at all, then ignore that, so that you begin to understand how your body responds, what your body responds to, what you can tolerate, what you can't tolerate, so that you can empower yourself to be in control of your health, so that we don't need to rely on people that clearly, like the brother said at the beginning, don't actually know why we are in the state that we are in. So if you go to my website, thenaturallyyoucoach.com, and use the discount code Hayfever, you can get 20% off some of the products I have on my site, including a turmeric blend, a probiotic supplement, vitamin C powder, sea moss gel, dry sea moss, all those lovely things. That's thenaturallyyoucoach.com/shop. Thank you so much for listening to the presentation. And if there are any questions and if there's time, then we can go through those.
Big up, drop the ones in the chat. Thank you very much, sis. Pierre ones getting drop in the chat. Thank you very much. And I know a lot of people had questions and that sort of stuff, so hands have already gone up. All right, we're gonna try and get 3 in. Let me see. Is it Jessery? Don't know if I said your name right, but if you can unmute your mic and ask your question, you've had your hand up for quite some time, so this is your chance to ask your question. If not, I'm gonna move on to Manjaro. Manjaro, this is your chance to ask your question. Big up everyone putting the ones, so many ones in the chat. So much appreciation for the sis. Thank you very much.
So the discount code's Hayfever, by the way, family.
All right, Naomi. Whoops. Allowed to talk. Okay. All right, last chance. Manjaro.
Yeah, good evening.
Greetings.
Good evening.
Yeah, one moment, let me just park, yeah?
All right, if you're gonna park, we have to move on. Kelson, if you can unmute your mic, Kelson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Greetings.
Yep. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful presentation and for the tips and histamine, just opened my eyes. We just want to know, do you know any sort of natural foods that contain zinc? Because I just don't want to take any sort of supplement tablets.
Yeah, no, I understand. So for anyone that does want to take any supplements, the only ones I'd recommend is a zinc in a spray form that comes with silver. Then there's one called from the Health Factory called Zinc Nano. That's the only supplemental one that I would recommend. But as far as foods are concerned, if you're not taking animal products and fish, then seafoods, foods that come from the sea that the animals would have eaten, they contain a lot of zinc. So we've got the seafoods, chlorella, spirulina, the blue-green algae, those kind of things. And then there's also high amounts of zinc that you can get in most nuts and seeds. For brothers, I always recommend you guys have things like Brazil nuts and pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds, because they've got a lot of the nutrients that your body uses. And also as brothers, you guys release zinc when you're having your emissions. So in the same way sisters will lose iron, so it's more important for us to rebuild our iron. With brothers, it's really important for your immunity to make sure you replenish the zinc that you will lose with emissions unless you're practicing, abstinence or something like that. So nuts and seeds added to your diet is really useful. So you can snack on Brazil nuts, you can soak pumpkin seeds overnight and then put them in your smoothies or put them on your porridges or your breakfasts. And those are really reliable ways of getting those nutrients in. in from the plant kingdom as opposed to the animal. Because if you're talking about animal kingdom, then you know most animal sources have got zinc in them. But plant kingdom, nuts, seeds, seafoods is the way to go.
Thank you, sis. Manjaro, you said you've parked now, so if you just raise your hand, I can allow you to talk. Where are you? Let me see if I can find you. Oh, there you are. Allowed to talk. All right, Manjaro.
Okay, greetings. Can you hear me?
Greetings.
Okay, yeah. I'm a frequent traveler to Jamaica, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I go there, no issues. Whole heap of flowers and pretty plants. No, whole heap of pollen.
Yep.
No issues with hay fever. I just want to know why.
You know what? That's so interesting. And thank you for that question, because Leon and I were actually talking about this at the beginning when he invited me. I know now 4 people who have left this country with hay fever at various times of the year, gone to Dubai, gone to Jamaica, gone to Ghana. And when they get there, same amount of beautiful pollen, no reactions. And that's because what's also coming up in a lot of the medical research is that people that are suffering with symptoms similar to reactions to nature are actually suffering more from pollution, the dust that's in the air. And that's what people's bodies are responding to. It's getting into our upper respiratory tract, and our body is sensing it's a toxin, it's a dangerous toxin, and we're doing the same thing. Our body's wrapping it up with mucus and releasing it out through our nose, allergic rhinitis, and it's the symptoms are the same as the pollen. So unfortunately, we live in a very polluted environment. So one of the best things we can do, again, is to spend as much time we can in nature, be around plants, have air cleansing plants in your home, the plants that can actually absorb the toxins from the air, having crystals in your air with you, in your room with you, in your space with you, airing out your home, making sure you're hoovering the carpets and the floors, all of those kind of things. And that's just an unfortunate thing that we have to do to survive in this industrial environment that we're in. And that's why you are not having those reactions in the cleaner environments that we have in the West Indies.
That's right, sis. Thank you for that, brother. And a lot of people in the chat are saying, me too, when I go to Guyana, when I go to Barbados. Yes, it's something to do with our environment. So remember at the beginning when I said, if the fish is sick, what should you do? Should you treat the fish or change? There's something about this environment, people, that we live in that is making us sick. Yeah. And I'm going to try and explain that in my presentation right now. So thank you for that, sis. If you do get a chance, sis, if you can work through some of those Q&A questions in the Q&A section, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go on to my presentation now. And then if you guys stay to the end, I'm going to tell you exactly how to get rid of every allergy for good. Every allergy. You just need to stay right to the end. Yeah. All right, so big up everyone who's spoke so far. Big up Jennifer, big up Leah, big up all the people in the chat, big up all the people who've asked questions. I am now because of what they've covered, I can kind of go over this and hopefully it will make sense to people. Leah talked about histamines. It is a lot to do with histamines, yeah? So I'm gonna break down the science behind hay fever now. Even Jennifer, she talked about our immune system is in our gut. Our immune system is in our gut. Yes, so those are the 2 main keys, histamine and our immune system being in our gut. Now, what you need to understand is anything that causes inflammation causes a histamine release. So what you're looking at right now is white blood cells releasing histamine, yeah? This is what happens in our body anytime your body's under attack, any type of inflammation. Now, think about what causes the body inflammation. Pretty much everything. The weather can cause inflammation. The food you eat can cause inflammation. The water you drink can cause inflammation. Medication can cause, there's so many things. Even just injuring yourself can cause inflammation. If I twist my ankle, that's inflammation. It's going to cause a histamine release. The histamine release is like a defense mechanism for your body. It's releasing the histamine to go and fight off whatever the invading pathogen is, yeah? So in this case, it's pollen, the histamine gets released and the body feels like it's under attack, it's trying to defend itself. So what is causing the body to feel like it's under attack? Now, here's where it gets interesting, people. Because Jennifer talked about the immune system being in the gut. If you have gut inflammation and then you breathe in something like pollen, that pollen can interact with undigested proteins in your gut, and that can cause a histamine release. Now, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but we did say we was gonna cover essential oils. So this is what I want you guys to do. There will be a replay, but this is what I want you guys to do. Take a screenshot of this right now. This is the essential oils that you guys can use that will help you with hay fever. Take a screenshot of this. You're not gonna have enough time to write them down. People, there will be a replay. Don't worry, because people were saying, Leah, can you slow down? There will be a replay. Yeah, there will be a replay. So don't worry about that. But take a screenshot of that. That's the essential oils. But I just want to show you this. This is a video, and it literally explains all of the allergies that people tend to suffer from. It's all to do with histamine release. So if you suffer from hay fever, asthma, eczema, I saw Corinne in the chat, she said that her granddaughter suffers from all of them, hay fever, asthma, eczema. It's to do with the same thing, inflammation, which is histamine release. Check this out.
Histamine, friend or foe, or frenemy. From NIH Medline Plus magazine. Histamine. Is it the most annoying chemical in the body?
Plant.
It's the stuff that allergies are made of. Hay fever, food allergy, skin allergies. Histamine plays a big role in all of them. And those conditions play a big role in us. In 2015, CDC data showed that more than 8% of US adults had hay fever. More than 5% of US children had food allergies, and at least 12% of all US kids had skin allergies. So what's the deal? Why do we have such a pesky chemical in our body? Well, histamine is usually our friend. Histamine is a signaling molecule sending messages between cells. It tells stomach cells to make stomach acid, and it helps our brain stay awake. You may have seen these effects illustrated by medicines that block histamine. Some antihistamines can make us sleepy, and other antihistamines are used to treat acid reflux. Histamine also works with our immune system. It helps protect us from foreign invaders. When the immune system discovers an invader, immune cells called B cells make IgE antibodies. The IgEs are like wanted signs that spread throughout the body, telling other immune cells about specific invaders to look for. Eventually, mast cells and basophils pick up the IgEs and become sensitized. When they come in contact with a target invader, they spew histamine and other inflammatory chemicals. Blood vessels become leakier, so that white blood cells and other protective substances can sneak through and fight the invader. Histamine's actions are great for protecting the body against parasites. But with allergies, the immune system overreacts to harmless substances, not parasites. This is when histamine becomes our foe. Common allergens include peanuts, pollen, and animal dander. Leaky vessels cause tearing in eyes, congestion in the nose, and swelling basically anywhere. Histamine works with nerves to produce itching. In food allergies, it can cause vomiting and diarrhea. And it constricts muscles in the lungs, making it harder to breathe.
All right, so I hope we all got that. So it's the histamine release that leads to the itching, because it irritates your nerves. It's the histamine release that leads to your eczema. It's the histamine release that leads to your eyes itching, your ears, your nose, and constriction of your lungs and that sort of stuff. That's histamine release due to inflammation. And you now know that inflammation is really in your gut, yeah? That inflammation. And I'm sure I asked at the beginning who suffers from, the itchy eyes. A lot of ones went in the chat. A lot of people said, when I said, what about the runny nose? A lot of ones. What about the ears? A lot of ones. So we all have suffered from this, me included. I used to suffer from hay fever bad. I used to suffer from hay fever for over 30 years. Don't believe me? Check this out. Who's this? That's me when I was, I don't know, 8 years old or something like that. This is me in Jamaica on the porch of my grandmother's yard in Jamaica, yeah? And I swear down, I went to my mom's house and I got this picture. All the pictures of me when I was growing up is me like this. puffy face. Look at my eyes, mash up. Look at my nose, sneezing. I don't know if you can see in my right hand, I got the tissue in my right hand. This was me every year for 30 years. Every year, every summer, this was me, yeah? Mash up, mash up, mash up. But, you know, I was looking fresh though. Check the kicks out. Trainers looking fresh, you know what I mean? Still looking fresh, even though I was mash up with the Hayfever. Don't know where I was going with those shorts though. Them Bermuda beach shorts. Some mad, I don't know where I was going with them shorts. And that top, black and yellow stripy top. I don't know where I was going with that. Like looking like a bumblebee referee. I don't know where I was going with that, but the kicks look good. You get me? I don't know about all the other stuff, pear colors and that. You know what I mean? Enough colors. I don't know about the other stuff, but yeah, man looking fresh. No color coordination whatsoever, you know, I swear, mad. You know, when people say, when they're talking about racism and they say, oh, I don't see color. Well, back then I did not see color, boy. Yellow, black, purple, green, orange, gray, like all colors. But yeah, every year, mash up, mash up, mash up for over 30 years. I suffered from hay fever for over 30 years. And then when I studied science and I realized what I'm about to tell you now, I got rid of hay fever within 30 days. So I suffered from hay fever for over 30 years. I'm going to tell you now how to get rid of it within 30 days. Now check this out. I found this online. This says 6 ways to beat your allergies. All right. Now this was like a couple days ago. And it says eliminate food irritants. And Leah talked about high histamine foods. So you got to eliminate them. And even Leah spoke about this. Leah talked about trying to avoid wheat, dairy, and sugar. These are irritating foods. These are going to cause the inflammation in your gut. Look what it says here. If you are prone to allergic reactions, including hay fever, you can very often have a reaction to certain foods, typically grain, gluten, dairy foods, which, like pollen, contain grass proteins. Now, what is it about grass proteins? Yeah. Now, check this out. This is another thing. When you know, people who know me, you know I'm a scientist. I like to do my research. This says extracting protein from grass. It should be cheap to buy, offer good functionality in food, and it must be tasty. In this article, they go on to say protein extraction. Look what it says there. I've highlighted it. Grass contains a very high fiber content, which is no issue for four-stomached ruminants or ruminants. However, humans are unable to metabolize grass in its natural form. In other words, it's a foreign protein. We should be eating protein that the body can recognize. Anytime you consume protein that is foreign to the body, like grass protein or any type or animal protein, then that can cause gut inflammation. And look at what it says here. It says grass protein powder has a similar amino acid profile to that of soya. I used to have soya products, even when I turned quote unquote vegan. All the vegan products were soya. Well, soya has a similar amino acid profile to grass protein. So that's going to cause gut inflammation. Eggs, that's going to cause gut inflammation. Whey, that's going to cause gut inflammation. The stuff that Leah was talking about, wheat, dairy, sugar, that's going to cause gut inflammation. Guess what? When I was 8 years old, I was eating all of that stuff. Hardo bread, you know, door stoppers, ram, do you get me? Pure soya, pure eggs, eating absolute foolish. And when I was out in Jamaica, enough sugar, yeah? Damaging my gut inflammation. That's what it's about, yeah? So what causes gut inflammation? Look at this diagram. This is your colon, your large intestine. And you see there, if undigested proteins get into your large intestine, look at your large intestine. People don't really look inside of their body. Look at their large intestine. It goes up, across, then down and out. So this is where the waste products go. The waste products first have to go up. They call this the ascending colon. Then across, they call that the transcending colon. Then down, they call that the descending colon. So if you're consuming things that are undigested, they can get stuck here. You know why they get stuck here? Because this is the hardest part to move up. Because this is going up against gravity. So this is the hardest part for, you know, waste products to move up. Once it goes to this part, goes across and down, it's easy. But a lot of the stuff happens here. And for people, they don't really know what's happening inside, but this shows you what's happening inside. If undigested protein gets into this area here, it can get stuck here. It's supposed to get in there, go upwards against gravity, go across, and then down and out. Yeah, up, across, down, and out. So this part here. Now, I read a book. This was a couple years ago, because again, I suffered from hay fever for over 30 years. And then once I read this book, I got rid of it within 30 days. So this is Dr. Norman W. Walker's book. It's called Colon Health, because like Jennifer said, your immune system starts in your gut. This is called Colon Health, the key to a vibrant life. Now, this part here changed my life. Yeah. Now, you can't read all of that. Obviously, I'm not going to read all of that, but let's just go closer on this part. Check this out. He found that a lot of our issues are due to undigested proteins not moving up, across, and out. So look at all of these issues. Undigested food reflex, pituitary gland issues could be due to all the undigested protein in your colon. Hay fever due to undigested protein in your colon. Thymus issues, chronic acute inflammation, mineral deficiency, calcium deficiency. A lot of the issues are due to this part of your colon. When I realized this, and I was like, raw, I need to clean out my colon. Again, I suffered from hay fever for over 30 years. Once I cleaned out my colon, I didn't have hay fever again within 30 days. And I'm being generous. It was like within 3 days. But I'd say 30 days because I want you guys to test this out as well. Yeah. So you got to understand this needs to move up and this needs to move across. What will help it? Obviously, a healthy diet, all the stuff that Jennifer and Leah has been saying. Obviously, hydration. If you're dehydrated, there's not going to be any movement here. So it has to be hydrated. Yeah. Very important information. This information could save your life, literally save your life. Yeah. So if you're someone who suffers from hay fever or eczema or asthma or any of these irritating diseases that are due to inflammation in the gut, which is histamine release, you now know that, you know, I could potentially say that you now know that you're full of, you might be full of, potentially, you might be full of, you might be. But it's not just that. It's not just the foods that we're eating, which is causing us gut inflammation. Look at this. 5 medications that cause gut inflammation. Birth control pills, steroids, acid blocking meds, and antibiotics, yeah? And by the way, this is not my info chart. So the people that are watching, you know, the powers that be, it's not me. This is from, you see the person there who put that together. A doctor put this together. But look at the first one, NSAIDs. Does anyone know what that stands for? NSAIDs. That stands for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So check this out. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. So some people are taking anti-inflammatory drugs for whatever reason, and the side effect is inflammation. The side effect is gut inflammation. Mel said it ruins your intestines. Yeah. So you take anti-inflammatory drugs and the side effect is inflammation. How does that make any sense? Yeah. So guess what you need to do? You need to heal your gut. That is the main thing. If you want to get rid of your allergies for good, you need to heal your gut. Now, a lot of people were saying, well, how come I don't suffer from it when I go to my natural, you know, when I go back to Jamaica or Barbados or that sort of stuff? It's because, again, if the fish is sick, you got to look at the environment. Like Leah said, there's pollution over here. Yeah, there's the food is different over here. What you need to understand with white blood cells is Africans naturally have a lower white blood cell count than Europeans. Africans naturally have a lower white blood cell count. Why? Because white blood cells get released to deal with inflammation. In other words, to deal with attacks of the body. You know, when your body's under attack, white blood cells start to release inflammation or release histamine, yeah? But what if you come from a natural habitat, you know, like Africa or Jamaica or Barbados, where nothing's attacking you? The food that you're eating is fine. The water that you're drinking is fine. The air that you're breathing is fine. Guess what? You're not gonna need so many white blood cells because you're not under attack. So that's the reason why Africans naturally, globally, have lower white blood cells. Now, when you come over here, it becomes a disadvantage because now you're in a different environment. Now you're in a different environment where you need a lot of white blood cells because everything's attacking you, yeah? All right, so I hope you learned a lot from that. That literally will reverse everything, what I just said right there. But like we said at the beginning, 90% of people won't take this information and change. 90%, because that's what we said at the beginning. Of the people who, you know, want to change, everyone wants to change, but when it comes on to the people who really do something, it's only 10%. So now, we're about to talk about the Black Holistic Health course and Jennifer's Healing Herbs course.